My name is Peter Pomerantsev. I'm a writer. I'm a senior fellow at the London School of Economics and at the University of Johns Hopkins. Welcome to my exp. Information war has become kind of a very common metaphor through which we try to understand what's going on in our very new digitally driven information landscape. The most dangerous part of information war is the very idea of information war. Now let me explain what I mean. Let's break this term down a little bit. There's always been a tradition of militaries and secret services doing PSYOPs, psychological operations, in order to confuse, dismay, undermine the opponent. That's a long and glorious tradition. I think maybe the earliest example is the Trojan horse. The Trojan horse is one of the finest information operations ever launched in the history of warfare, and a metaphor that we still use all the time when talking about the information space. And obviously, with these new digital tools, you can do a hell of a lot more. If you're a guy in a military or you're a guy in a secret service trying to mess with the other side, you can now use bots, trolls, closed online spaces. I mean, it's party time for the PSYOPs department in any military organization. And obviously, we need to adapt to that. We probably need a new military and security doctrine to make sense of that, which is something we don't have. The complicated bit with this stuff is that it's not actually military aggression. There's another way that we've come to talk about information war, which I think is a lot more damaging. It's worth actually visiting Russia for a few moments, because I've seen how corrosive this idea can be through my many years of living and working in Russia. So already in the 1990s and early 2000s, there's a group of Russian academics, very connected to the security services, who start seeing the whole of politics and history through the prism of information war. Their idea is that everything that we talk about as ideas, values, etc., are just forms of subversion and warfare. And their main idea is that the Soviet Union fell not because it had terrible political ideas and a terrible economic system and human rights violations, but because of information warfare from the West. It's a worldview that's deeply cynical, where the idea of freedom of speech is just a weapon that was used to undermine us, where the idea of economic reforms was just a weapon planted by the Western secret services to undermine us. It's a world where there is no idea of history, no idea of progress, no idea of good and bad. Everything is manipulation. Now, for a lot of the sort of 2000s and even early 2010s, these guys were seen as eccentrics. Then something happens. Arab Spring, huge protests in Moscow, suddenly a wave of protests across the world which make the Kremlin very scared. And as they reach out for a language to explain away this kind of wave of emancipation that's coming at them, they use this language. So they start saying, so the Kremlin and the Kremlin spokespeople and Kremlin propaganda start saying, oh, all that stuff in the Arab Spring, that's just information warfare. These aren't genuine people with genuine demands. They're just manipulated by the information warriors in the West. Soros, doesn't matter, somewhere. It's a conspiracy theory. So of course, what we really need is a different type of internet. An internet with public oversight, an internet that's transparent, where you can see who's influencing you and how. We need a space on the internet where the rules of Facebook and Twitter don't apply, where the logic is not driven by commercial or state interests, a public space where we can interact with each other in safety and transparency, where there are no like and share buttons. We have to have that vision. And ultimately, that's the sort of systemic changes that we need. But what do we do today? I mean, if you're just a person online today, what do you do? I think we all have a lot of responsibility. That's a great change. In propaganda studies, we always used to talk of a propagandist and a propagandee. Yeah? Between someone who is powerful and is beaming out the propaganda, a Goebbels or a head of the BBC, whichever. Not that I equate the two. I'm using propaganda very generally, not as a good or bad thing, just as a means of public communication. And a propagandee, a passive audience sitting at home, watching television, listening to radio. So there was a strict division. It's not like that anymore. Firstly, anyone can create a campaign. And actually, literally every time you share, retweet, like something, you yourself are becoming a little propagandist. You're doing something. So I think firstly, we have to start understanding that we're actually active participants. And that does come with a lot of responsibility. I've been going out and buying newspapers. It's amazing. You get to see a different world. You stop panicking because you get to see a much bigger picture of the world. I've subscribed to lots of old media. We're talking about emotional things. We're talking about this. It's almost like self-therapy. And what a therapist will always try to do when you feel things are really emotional and really fraught and really kind of hysterical, in want of a better word. And it's not a very good word. I don't like this word at all. A therapist will always say, look, take a few steps back, put this in context. So I think constantly putting things in context, taking a step back, understanding that this thing that seems to be a Twitter storm at this moment that is enraging you, or a Facebook row, actually it's a tiny drop in a huge discourse. And just taking a step back and calming down and then reapproaching it with some calm is probably the only spiritual discipline that I think can really apply here.